Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education meeting. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Snoblin?
Here.
Mr. Edson?
Here.
Mr. Block?
Here.
Mr. Scribner?
Here.
Mr. Bergner?
Here.
Mr. Carey?
Here.
Mrs. Golan?
Here. Thank you very much. Well, this is a big evening for District 115. After a 2-year search, we are ready to announce our candidate for next superintendent of the high school. In past meetings, as you know, our staff gets up and they give a brief report about what we are about to vote on. But tonight, because we have been working together so closely over the past 24 months on this project, I thought it would be best if the board members gave you a report of what's going on. Now, District 67 just went through this process, and but it'll be on cable TV, and we want everybody to see what everybody did. So we're going to do a little bit of repeating, but we're going to do it a lot faster. So, if I could, I'd like to talk a little bit about the process that we've been through, and for that, I'm turning to Nikki Snoblin to give you just a little rundown of what our search process was all about.
Yes, and this overview will take a lot less time than the search process did. About 4 years ago, Dr. Griffith informed us that he wanted to get into the retirement pipeline, and once we got over our initial panic, we began to plan. About 2 years ago, we engaged a search firm to help us find a new superintendent, and that search began in earnest in September of this year. We had a planning meeting in September of the District 115 and District 67 boards. We very rarely had opportunities to meet all together, all 14 of us, so it was a really good experience to start learning how to work together and to come to some common expectations. During the fall, the search firm began actively recruiting candidates, placing ads, and received about 100 applications. They screened those for us, fortunately, and came up with the 6 candidates they felt were the best fit for our district. And that was based on community input as well as input from the boards. They had done a lot of focus groups in the community, just trying to find out what people thought would make an ideal superintendent for us. Reading the description, you would think we were looking for someone superhuman, but it was important to find out what was really important to the community. So in late November, the consultants presented detailed information to us on their 6 semifinalists for us, basically. In the second week of December, the full boards conducted the first round of interviews with those 6 candidates. We met with each of them individually. And then the boards deliberated again together to narrow the field. We had intended to narrow it down to 3 people, but we ended up feeling that 4 of the candidates were worth coming back. And that would also give community members, staff, administrators, involved parents an opportunity to meet those people as well. So this led to a very memorable week in January when the 14 board members saw more of each other than they did of their own families. We conducted a second interview with each of those 4 finalists during that week, and on those same days, the 3 teams of school and school community members, which consisted of staff, parent leaders, and independent community members, also volunteered their time to meet with the 4 finalists and give us feedback in writing. So on the Saturday of that week, which was January 14th, both boards met again to discuss the finalists, discuss the findings of all of the interview committees, and we surprisingly very quickly came to a consensus on our candidate, and most remarkably, it coincided with the virtually unanimous choice of all of the other groups who interviewed the 4 candidates. We felt that we had 4 outstanding candidates, but there was one who immediately jumped to the front for us and for the other teams that interviewed the candidates. So that was, it was remarkable, and we feel very comfortable about the fact that everyone was in complete alignment on that. So the next steps were to take care of the legal and logistical details, and there was quite a bit of that. There were a lot of legal requirements, of course, negotiating a contract. We had teams of board members who were doing reference checking. We had, I believe it was 17 or 18 references provided by the candidate, and this was specified by the search firm. They wanted specific references, so not just your best friend. You know, they wanted to pinpoint specific people in the school community where our candidate was coming from, to make sure that we really had the full picture on this candidate. So once we got through with all of those logistical issues, that brings us to what we're here for tonight.
Thank you, Nikki. We did not have to do this job with District 67. At the very beginning of the process, we did ask, is shared services working? Do we want to continue shared services? The 14 of us discussed it at great lengths, and we determined that, yes, we did want to go on. And so if Jim could just give a little rundown, a reminder to the community about what shared services is about.
Sure, Sharon. In July of 2004, a shared service arrangement was agreed upon between District 67 and 115. The initial purpose was the engagement and sharing of the services of our superintendent, Dr. Griffith. But beyond that, there were a few principal goals. One was to strengthen the coordination of educational programs from K through 12. The second was to improve the operational effectiveness of both districts by sharing of administrative personnel, combining personnel, purchasing power, and other economies of scale. I should say anecdotally, this is a bit of a role model for many other school districts and municipalities in the state. They're being encouraged to start adopting this type of approach because of the efficiencies that result from it. So since 2004, we've been on this endeavor called Shared Services with great success. As of right now, we have 17 employees, including the superintendent, who share services related to finance, HR, buildings and grounds, transportation, curriculum, special ed, IT, and communications. As a result of the efforts over those years to streamline processes, go from two processes to a single, and look for efficiencies in bidding, et cetera, we have saved approximately $6.8 million since the inception of the agreement. That's the savings for both districts. Half goes to each. And currently, we're running at about a $1.2 million per annum savings for the combined districts. We have found that the benefits of shared services well outweigh any perceived disadvantages. The groups have worked together to support both schools, both boards, et cetera. And the continuation of shared services was really a no-brainer when it came up at the start of this process. So the new superintendent will be, again, part of the shared services arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Moving on, as was mentioned before, we broke up the tasks. We had somebody calling our references. We had a group writing up the new job description for our superintendent. We had a negotiating team, and we also had a team that looked at compensation throughout other districts, our peer groups, and what kinds of things should we be looking at since it's been 18 years since we had hired a superintendent in the city. And so Monty, you served on that committee. If you would give us just a brief rundown of what you found in the study.
Sure. Dick Block and I represent the district on a joint committee that was chaired by Bill Anderson of District 67. And together we sort of took up the charter of gathering benchmark compensation from comparable school districts in our area to be used to help structure and offer to the selected candidate. This task, of course, is somewhat complicated by the unique nature of the shared services agreement, in which the superintendent is hired by and is responsible to two separate school boards, but we were able to sort of parse our way out of that. So we ended up selecting 8 elementary school districts, 6 high school districts, and 2 unit districts, which are K through 12 districts, based upon proximity and on high academic achievement. Those districts were, in the elementary districts were Highland Park, Deerfield, Wilmette, Libertyville, Winnetka, Lincolnshire, Hinsdale, and Killdeer. And high schools were New Trier, Glenbrook, Stevenson, Libertyville, Highland Park, and the Township High School District 214. The 2 unit districts were Naperville and Indian Prairie. Working with a lot of help from Alan Albus to collect data, we actually collected comparable data and contracts, which from all of those school districts. We made some adjustments to to get on an apples-to-apples basis by removing some compensation for those superintendents who are in the retirement pipeline. We didn't want to inflate our data by including their full salaries. And in general, we found that high schools paid about 10% more than elementary schools. Most districts made contributions to the teacher retirement system and the teacher's health insurance system based on 100% of eligible compensation as they define it. Most provided an annual contribution to a retirement annuity in addition to base salary. Vacation days range from 20 to 30 days. Some of those districts allowed a portion of the vacation days that were unused to be sold back. Sick days range from 12 to 20. Most districts provided a monthly car allowance, averaging about $500 a month. Most paid 100% of family health and dental coverage, and also paid for an annual physical. Most provided life insurance benefits. There was quite a wide variation there, but typically in the 2 to 3 times salary range. And the average of a salary plus the annuity contributions for all of these districts, when averaged out, a combined average, again, base salary plus the annuity contribution was $225,000. And so we reported that back to the full board, and or both boards, and that was the comparable data that they were able to use in structuring an offer.
Thank you, Monty. Dick, is there anything you want to add about the original study?
No, I think that's comprehensively done, Monty.
Thank you, both of you. Well, now is our turn to introduce our candidate, and for that, I would like Todd Bergner to address the audience.
Thank you. And 67 has provided a bit of a spoiler for this, but I'll read this nevertheless.
Act surprised, everybody.
Lake Forest High School District 115 and Lake Forest Elementary School District 67 are pleased to announce the selection of Michael Simic as Superintendent of Schools for both school districts, effective July 1st, 2012. Mr. Simic was selected using a collaborative interviewing process involving parents, teachers, staff, administration, community, and school board members representing both districts. Mr. Simic received a bachelor's degree from Eastern Michigan University and a master's in educational leadership from Eastern Michigan University, and is completing a PhD in educational administration at Michigan State University. He currently serves as the superintendent of schools for the Berkeley Kindergarten through 12 School District in Oak Park, Michigan, where he has been since 2007, and previously served as superintendent of schools in Dansville, Michigan, from 2003 to 2007. Mike has demonstrated his belief that the superintendent should be the learning leader of the school. He was selected to participate in the Fulbright Administrative Exchange in Peterborough, England. He served as a Fulbright English assistant and was awarded a Goethe Institute scholarship and grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. So we look forward to welcoming Mike and his family to our community.
Mike added this today in an email. Wanted to make sure we knew who his family was. Mike and his wife Mari have 3 children. Gabrielle is currently a sophomore. Max is in 8th grade, so we will have 2 of the children at our high school in the fall. And Lilia is in 4th grade. Mari is also a Fulbright scholar and spent a full year in Paris as part of a teacher exchange program. I can't tell you how excited we are about this, and I know there are administrators and others in the audience who were part of the interview process, and if you don't mind, can I call on you, Linda Ganchert, just to say a word or two about your experience? Yeah, I'm afraid you do.
I didn't jot down notes, but when I saw the other ladies had notes, I jotted a few notes down. I'm Linda Ganchert, and I am president of the APT at the high school, and I'm very proud to be in that position. Like the other parents had said, 15 of us came together, and we came together, and I looked around the room, and I thought, I know why we're all here. We all have a common interest, but how are we going to agree? 15 people. And each day that went by, it became more and more clear how we were going to agree because Mr. Semick helped us get to that. He was incredibly personable. He walked in and he went around the whole table and introduced himself, shook our hand, and made little jokes, very, very personable, and I think our community will really embrace that. Our job, my job as APT president now, I see, is to embrace the Semick family, to welcome them to the high school, to make their transition as flawless as we can. And in August, I look forward to our new family orientation and not only welcoming them as a parent, but also to have the new superintendent there to speak to our families. And I know once he gets out there and communicates and meets people, people will embrace him as much as all of us did. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you for that whole week away from your family, helping us. Any administrators? Mr. Hoffman, do you have any comments about the process or the candidate?
Yes, I thank you for involving us. We had an administrative team that interviewed all 4 candidates. It was made up of 3 administrators, 2 principals and an assistant superintendent from 67, along with 2 assistant principal, director of evaluations, and myself from 115, and 3 shared service employees, business office, 2 business managers, and it was a wonderful process. And I think that what sold me was that Michael Simick was about kids. He was about what's best for students. It was not about what was best for himself. And I think that that was what sold us. I think we were in total agreement, the 9 of us, that he was the right person to take over for a superintendent who has been all about kids. And I really was worried that we would not find one that was held to that same standard. And we did, and I'm very pleased that he was chosen. The process was amazing. It was eye-opening, and all of us together knew that he was the right person, and we're glad that you chose him.
Thank you, Jay. Before we get to the vote then, I would like to ask John Scribner to present some of the details of the contract that we are entering into.
Before I summarize the contract, I'd like to just start with the preface that all contracts are born in compromise. There isn't a contract worth its having that's unilateral. All contracts also have to be looked at in the context of the competitive environment. We're not alone and we don't live in a bubble. We're going to be hiring someone that is, if the candidate is attractive to us, the candidate is attractive to other people. And it is in that context that we've got to be looking at the candidates and at the contract that is being negotiated. So starting with that, all right, the first thing is it's not our contract. It's District 67's contract. Pursuant to state law, the candidate has to be grounded, the superintendent has to be grounded in a single district. After the candidate, the superintendent that is grounded in a single district, he can be shared, and as we have done with Dr. Griffin for the past 8 years, pursuant to what has been referred to already as the shared service agreement. So the basics of the contract, now this is the overall contract, this is the contract with District 67 and Mr. Simick, are that it is a performance-based contract. It's for 3 years. It begins July 1st of 2012, and it ends on June 30th of 2015. It, being a performance-based contract, must have performance goals. Now, that's kind of hard to do when you don't know each other, okay? We kind of know what we want as a district. He doesn't know what he thinks we need yet as a district. So we tried to put together some goals that made some sense for someone coming in anew. First goal, there are 4 of them. First goal is to review, explore, research, and report to the board at the September 2012 board meeting a plan to coordinate and implement the new evaluation requirements of the revised Illinois State Code. There was a very large bill passed by the Illinois legislature recently that changes the whole way that teachers and principals are evaluated. This is worth a great deal of study, and we are very, very involved. We are very concerned that he get up to speed with this and bring us up to speed on the requirements of that law. Afterwards, he will continue to each contract year, he'll continue to report to the board the results of that review and implementation pursuant to the law. The second goal is that he is to provide on the day he starts work, which is July 1st of 2012, his plan for the first 100 workdays. He's going to outline his approach that he'll be taking to know and better understand the people, programs, partners, and community cultures that support High School District 115. This document will be considered a preliminary draft subject to feedback from the school community and other stakeholders. The third of his goals, his performance goals, are that he is to address the very critical personnel and performance concerns, personnel vacancies and performance concerns that both boards have, both the District 67 and the 115 board has. And then finally, the fourth goal is that by October 1st of 2012, he is to collaborate with the board to develop goals and priorities for the remainder of fiscal 2013, which would be the school year that ends in June of 2013, and address such items as assessment of key personnel, at the district structure, a plan to improve student achievement, the evaluation of goals, and the timeline for achieving the district's strategic plan. Those are the performance goals set out in the contract. The district has the right to change those goals as the times change and as the different things occur in the community that cause us to have to change our sites. As to compensation, the base compensation that is granted to Mr. Simic in the contract is $220,000. By the way, District 115 is sharing in 50% of all of these. It is a full 50-50 share between District 67 and 115 on all of the compensation of the superintendent. He's also to receive a shared services compensation. That is the compensation for serving on, for reporting to, two boards and reporting and the additional work necessary to be doing that. That shared services compensation is $30,000. So that brings you to a total base compensation of $250,000, 50% of which is borne by District 115, or $115,000. Additionally, we will be making the TRS pension contribution that was mentioned earlier by Monty on behalf of the superintendent. We will also be paying an annuity of $20,000 per year. That annuity, though, is in lieu of health and dental insurance. Mr. Simic has deferred taking the health and dental insurance, and in exchange for that, he is being paid an annuity. Should he choose to come onto the health and dental insurance coverage of the district, that annuity would be removed. He was also covered by a life insurance policy, a $750,000 life insurance policy, and will receive an auto allowance of $500 a month. He's going to get a moving expense reimbursement, and that is to move his household to Illinois. That is subject to a $15,000 limit. He will receive vacation days, 22 vacation days, and in the first year of employment, he will be able to sell back to us 10 of those days. He will not be able to do that beyond the first year. He will receive sick leave and personal days that are in keeping with the other senior administrative managers of the districts. And finally, we will be buying out, purchasing his service credits from the state of Michigan. He has 3 years to go before he qualifies for retirement in Michigan, and he can buy out that 3 years. We are going to buy it out for him by way of a loan. He will then repay us. The amount that is for the buyout is $99,500. He will repay that to the districts over the 3-year term of the contract. Should he leave the district at any time, that will accelerate the loan, and he will owe all of that money to us. A brief point on the shared services. Back in 2004 and 2005 school year, when we started the shared services, the compensation that we were paying for an exclusive superintendent prior to the shared services was $270,000 a year. In the year 2011-2012, our share, District 115 share of the superintendent's costs are $181,000. So $90,000 less than what we were paying in 2004-2005. In 2012 and 2013, the comparable number with the new superintendent will be $131,000. And that is a summary of the contract.
Thank you, Mr. Scribner. That contract was approved by the District 67 Board. Our job now is to approve the delineating agreement. Would you like to say a few words about that, John?
Well, the delineating agreement is simply the agreement by which we share the superintendent. It is a simple agreement. It's a 50-50 agreement. We each get to set goals, okay, with for the superintendent, and we each will evaluate the superintendent's performance individually as in relation to how well the superintendent is performing against those goals set by each individual district. Any increases in compensation, okay, to the superintendent over the 3-year term will be entirely based upon the evaluation of his evaluation and performance against those goals. I think that's it. There is really not a lot else.
Thank you very much, John. The 7 of us have been living this and breathing this project now for the last couple of years, and we ask a lot of questions of each other, of the other board, of Mr. Hernandez, our counsel. But at this point, if any board members have any comments or questions that they would like to bring up, then please be recognized by the chair.
Madam President, are you entertaining comments before the motions are made?
I can do that now, sure.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking.
Yes.
Or are we going to do it both? Or
I will entertain comments and discussions now, and then we will move and vote.
Okay, fine. In that case, I would like to make some comments now. I feel strongly about all the issues associated with hiring a new superintendent, and I know that my fellow board members do as well, both 115 board members and 67 board members. As some indication of how strongly I feel, I was supposed to be on a combination vacation business trip with my family today, and I was until 6:15 a.m. this morning, but late last week, when it became clear that we would have to vote on these matters tonight, I made plans to fly here and fly back tomorrow morning so that I could be here to make these comments and to cast my vote. My original intent was to commit my comments to writing so that I could give them to our recording secretary and they would be included in the minutes. Circumstances prevented me from doing that. Unfortunately, complicating all my plans, my mother passed away late Friday afternoon unexpectedly, and on a very human level, I know you can understand what that means, and as I say, it greatly complicated everything associated with my life. But I'm here, and I'm operating on very little sleep. I admit that up front. And if I'm not as eloquent or as careful or as succinct as I intend to be with my words, I hope you'll understand and grant me some indulgence. Ms. Barrett, I'm happy to help with recording these comments into the minutes because while I have a draft outline here, it's in no shape to give to you to transcribe. I have the greatest respect for this board and its members, as well as that of the 67 board, as many people have mentioned up until this point. We've all worked very hard over a long period of time, and we've spent a lot of time together, which has been a tremendous benefit, I would suggest to you, for all of us. The search process forced that togetherness, and I think I'll just speak for myself. To my surprise, there was great unanimity, both in terms of purpose, in mission and dedication, as well as in the end in agreement on who the best candidate was to lead both of our districts, and I'm very proud of that. I want to make it clear that I'm personally convinced that all of these people who serve with me on the 115 board and who serve on the 67 board are honorable people of high character serving in these largely thankless roles, I would suggest to you, for all the right reasons. And I'd like to add I have particular respect for our two board presidents, Mrs. Golan and Mrs. Wold. I don't think any of you in the public can comprehend the number of hours that they've put in and the seriousness with which they've undertaken their responsibilities, and I commend them very genuinely for that. Having said that, I also believe that reasonable people can disagree reasonably, and I think it's obviously one of the foundational principles of our democracy. I intend to vote no on these agreements tonight, and I'd like to explain to you why. Fundamentally, it's a matter of principle for me. My heart and my conscience won't allow me to vote yes. I don't say this lightly or to be disruptive or out of any feeling of sour grapes if things don't go the way I'd like them to go. The board has no more important role than to hire and supervise its most senior employee. Hopefully, this hiring is only a once-in-a-decade or so experience. Hopefully, we get some tenure, some benefit out of all of this hard work. And so it provides a rather unique opportunity to make progressive changes for the better in a lot of different arenas, including in our contractual relationship, in my opinion, with the superintendent. I don't think we should pass up this opportunity to improve. I'm voting no for two reasons, the first of which is really a procedural reason. I have some major substantive issues with the way the negotiating process took place, but I really don't think it's appropriate to discuss that here. I don't think it's constructive, although it by itself would have been a reason for me to vote no. My major concern is one of substance with the agreements. I believe that in hiring and supervising our superintendent, there must be a balance between fair compensation and accountability. I believe that the agreements as proposed do not achieve that balance. Frankly, I believe that they are performance-based in name only. There are no meaningful accountability provisions embodied within these agreements. There are no consequences. Basically, they're agreements to agree. They should provide substantive terms, in my opinion, to achieve alignment between the board, its superintendent, and the public. To me, it's the board's responsibility to communicate to the superintendent its vision of what is important and to provide incentives and/or consequences to ensure linkage. At a time when there is seemingly a nationwide movement toward greater accountability and transparency in public education, including such concepts as pay for performance, endorsed strongly, as for instance by the current administration in Washington, D.C., I find it unacceptable that Lake Forest High School legally defined its relationship with its CEO in terms that are, to me, reminiscent of the 1950s. What's being proposed strikes me as archaic and, frankly, often ineffective in public education and not appropriate for or in the best interests of our constituents. To me, it boils down to adhering to what I see as good public governance principles, and I don't see these agreements as passing the test. To be simplistic and frankly somewhat crude, what's proposed, in my opinion, is all carrot and no stick. I believe our communities deserve and expect better. I suspect some of my fellow board members are inclined to vote in favor of these agreements in order to secure this outstanding candidate, and I want to stress that he is an outstanding candidate. I would simply suggest that good principles should not be sacrificed for any one individual, and as a practical matter, none of us are indispensable, in my opinion. To prevent being in any way misunderstood or misconstrued, I would like to stress that my comments tonight should not be interpreted as being in any way negative to Mr. Simic or to my fellow board members. I was an early supporter of Mr. Simic's after the first round of interviews, and as has been mentioned numerous times, he was a unanimous choice as the #1 candidate. So my comments don't go to him at all. They go to our own internal process for negotiating and coming to agreement. If the vote tonight is to approve the agreements as proposed, I would like to strongly beseech my fellow board members to seek other means of creating additional meaningful accountability, linkage, and transparency for both the performance of the superintendent and indeed the performance of the board and the overall district. Several ideas were advanced over the past week to try and achieve this, either within or outside these agreements, but contemporaneous with their approval. Others, however, felt that this was not appropriate. I urge you, my fellow board members, to strengthen Lake Forest High School in these ways without delay, given the terms proposed, or more accurately, the lack of explicit expectations and consequences contained in the agreements and the similarity with past contracts. It is frankly not at all surprising to me why some wonder out loud whether our superintendent works for the board or it's the other way around. Lastly, to the extent that these agreements are approved, I encourage the public to become familiar with their terms, to draw their own conclusions, and to advocate for what they believe is best for Lake Forest High School. I thank everyone for your time and for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Block, and I do appreciate your honesty. We are not a rubber stamp board, I will tell you that. We express our views openly and honestly with one another and with the public. And I also appreciate the sacrifice you've made on behalf of your family tonight. Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment with regard to this evening's vote?
Yes. I also have a brief statement. And some of the people in the room know to the extent I've struggled with this. As one of the first among us to favor Mike Simic as our preferred candidate, I'm incredibly pleased that the two boards have selected him. I was also extremely impressed with the way 14 members of the two boards committed themselves to this process. As a group, we probably shared more than 40 hours together just over the last couple of months. That collaboration continued up to and included the well-researched development of a modern performance-based compensation structure and philosophy. The new structure would have included a modest level of variable pay and would have forced the development of clear goals for the superintendent and the establishment of objective performance and evaluation criteria. It would have, in fact, offered the superintendent an opportunity with outstanding performance to earn even more than it is contained within this current contract. Unfortunately, while this contract appears fairly innocuous, particularly compared to its predecessor, it contains none of the modernizing elements agreed upon. Instead, it reflects what I think is an archaic compensation structure that imposes no accountability on either the board or the administration. It is, as Dick said, a performance-based contract in name only, and in my mind is just more of the same. Equally unfortunate to me is that the abandonment of the developed principles occurred with little or no additional formal engagement of the boards. So while in the end the compensation will fall far short of the current expense faced by the two districts, the package as currently presented will place our new superintendent second in the selected peer group, only to New Trier's retiring superintendent, who's presumably at the peak of her earnings. Our new superintendent will again be among the most highly compensated in the state, and this contract offers nowhere to go but up over the next 3 years. We'll continue to hear that you have to divide by 2, as this cost is shared by 2 districts. That's true. The fact is, though, that the shared services model was designed specifically to gain the efficiencies that dividing by 2 reflects. It was not designed to obscure excessive compensation for which there is little accountability. So while I happily support and welcome Mike and his family to our districts, I will not support the contract as it is currently presented.
Thank you, Mr. Bergner. Are there other comments by other board members at this time?
We've heard the compensation package that we ended up with in the contract that was approved by District 67 referred to as archaic, but I actually think that it's not so much I don't think it's so much a matter of that model being archaic, but just being a different model. School districts aren't businesses. Often the superintendent is referred to as the CEO of the district, but it really isn't the same thing as being the CEO of a company. There are no shareholders, there are no profits. The only product is our students. It's reasonable to me that we operate under different models for a lot of things. We have experienced immense cost savings in sharing the superintendents. We continue to. I have stated in our discussions, and not everybody agrees, that when we look at the compensation, we should be looking at the total compensation minus the stipend for shared services, because that is in recognition of the fact that our superintendent is overseeing 2 districts instead of 1. It's not the same thing as just totaling up the number of students. There are a lot of differences in actually overseeing 2 districts. And then I guess I'd like to say, well, one thing about the goals. I think John said very well that in developing these goals that are built into the contract, they are vague, and they had to be vague because the superintendent coming in doesn't know our community yet. He doesn't know all about our school yet. We state that by October of this year, he has to have collaborated with the board to develop those specific goals and assessments that we've been wanting. I think we all accept that we have to have measurements. I don't accept that they should come from the top down. I don't think that we should be imposing them on the superintendent. I think that he should be assisting us in developing goals that are appropriate for our district and that everyone can agree on. And then I guess finally I just want to say something about the process. In my mind, when people come together for the common good, and presumably that's why we're all on the board, the best product to come out of deliberations with would be consensus. Consensus isn't compromise and it isn't a vote. It's everybody learning to understand, to see things from each other's perspectives and coming up with a solution that not just I gave up something, you gave up something, we meet in the middle, but we all can agree that we really are looking at the best thing. We might have come to it from different directions, but we all ended up in the same place and we all feel we can support it. That didn't happen, and that's unfortunate, and it's not going to happen. We had 14 diverse people with different backgrounds and concerns. The next best thing is compromise, and that is what we ended up with. We ended up with some people giving up a little bit. I know it's not the contract I was hoping for. It's not the contract that Todd and Dick were hoping for. It's not the contract Mike Simic was hoping for. I hope everybody feels that it's a contract that we can live with, that we went through a good process, and that we did the best we could for the benefit of the community and our students. Thanks.
Thank you, Nikki.
Can I add for a moment? You were wrong on one thing, Nikki. We did have consensus. We did all agree, every single one of us, that the candidate is the person, is the right person.
And that's worth pointing out yet again, that truly it is remarkable that our 2 boards and the community were unanimous. I mean, it hardly even was a matter of consensus. We didn't have to talk each other into it. Everybody pretty much just felt the same way. I kept feeling like I had, quote, drunk the Kool-Aid. So that is true, and that's the really important thing. And once he's here, that's what we're all going to remember when we see him at work every day. So thank you, John.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, Jim?
I think it's important to note that, you know, each party enters a transaction with a certain number of goals in mind. First and foremost was to follow a superb educator in Dr. Griffith with another superb candidate, and we found said candidate. We found somebody who didn't use the word I in every sentence, but talked about we and had a high degree of focus on the kids. When the group was discussing how will we arrange a contract, I, as well as Dick and Todd and several of us here, really wanted to go for this more current approach towards compensation. Well, sometimes you can't always get what you want. I think that's Rolling Stones, by the way. But the point is that in any negotiations, you've got to be willing to give up on certain things, come back for another day, and maybe you'll get there. Maybe not first phase, but maybe the second time. We are getting a superb candidate who's relocating his family over here to Illinois to an unknown district to him. He did a lot of research, but it's still largely unknown. That takes a lot of trust in us. I think what we basically found was that he was more concerned up front with certainty, perhaps security, and willing later on to talk about moving towards a type of compensation program like we've been considering. So while there may be some disappointment in terms of how we got here or what the structure is of the last agreement, 14 of us who day one probably would have had trouble agreeing on what day of the week it was and what size table we ought to use, all came to agreement on the same candidate within the first few minutes of getting together that final Saturday. It was unbelievable the way the group coalesced around this candidate. So yes, there could be some things we could have done differently, but in the final analysis, we achieved goal number one. We obtained a superb superintendent to replace Dr. Griffith. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, Madam President, that I think the basic difference here is the priority in which you assign to the goals, whether you believe that you know, the principles are the most important thing, the concepts, what you embed in the contract, or the individual is the most important thing. And I certainly respect, as I said earlier, my fellow board members' opinions, but I do think it's a difference with a major distinction. So, thank you.
Any other comments at this time? If not, then may I have a motion?
I'll move that the Lake Forest High School District 115 Board of Education approve the agreement delineating compensation and responsibilities of the superintendent under an intergovernmental agreement for the utilization of shared services with Lake Forest School District 67 and Michael Simic in substantially the form as attached hereto as Exhibit A, and authorize the board president to execute the same.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Black?
Nay.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mr. Edson?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Scribner?
Aye.
Mrs. Golan?
Aye. Motion carries. And I'd like to say,
Mr.
Mr. Bergner? Sorry. Mr.
No.
Bergner.
motion still carries 5-2. And I'd like to congratulate Lake Forest High School. We have a new superintendent coming in. I'm just going to take a moment to say a few thank yous. I'm going to thank School District 67. Some of them are still here. You have no idea what it was like to have 14 people living together the last 2 years and to come together the way we did. And it's because it's about the children, it's about the staff, it's about our parents, and it's about our community. And that's what we focused on. May not agree on all the little fine points, but that was our focus. And I want to thank everyone involved. I also want to thank School Exec Connect. They were the consultants we used, Drs. David Clough and Linda Hansen. The model was theirs, the way we came together, the way we divided up, the way we parceled out the jobs, and I want to thank them for their help on that. We wouldn't let Alan leave his office because he had to keep cranking out spreadsheets for us. Mr. Hernandez has been an absolute gem to work with. We've always got Harry to rely on, and I'm sure we will for a long time in the future. Behind the scenes, of course, Pam Burke, Ann Whipple, and Linda Barrett. They run the district, what can I say? They hold it together. And also, again, all of the stakeholders who were involved in that long week of interviews with our candidates. Just did. So thank you, everyone. And with that, I think we will, I'm going to call that my president's report, and we will move on to the superintendent's report.
All right, Madam President, members of the board, and audience, thank you for being here tonight. Well, congratulations to all of you and new superintendent, Dr. Michael Simic, who I think will, I did meet one time, and it appears will do a great job. So congratulations, everybody. Just a short superintendent's report. Jay, just a couple of big things going on at the high school?
Sure, a couple of things that just happened this week is we gave the Illinois Youth Survey to every student in the building. And that's the first time we've given it to all the students. We usually give it to the 9th and the 11th graders. But this time we gave it to all 1,700 students in our building. And we get really great information about the life that goes on at our school, all the different things that our teens face, and that information helps us provide programming and keep our kids safe. So we're looking forward to that information, and we'll share that at a board report later in this year. But we thank our teachers for giving up class time to give the survey to the entire staff, or excuse me, entire student body. The second thing was we had our first ever winter pep rally, and that was last Friday, and it was very well received. Last week was our Winter Spirit Week, with different dress-up days and different spirited activities throughout the week. And we gave away the Spirit Jug, which is a new concept in our school, and the seniors class of 2012 won the Spirit Jug this year for showing the most spirit throughout the week and at the pep rally. It was an interactive pep rally planned by our students, our SALT team, which is our Student Athletic Leadership Team, which is headed up by Michaeline Tomek. And the students did a great job in planning and executing the entire week. A really great shout out to them, as it involved quite a few students, and they really did a great job. One of the things that they did that was a little bit special was we were able to give accolades to all our fall sports and our winter sports. Our 4 state championship banners were presented, and all the accolades that our students truly deserved. And the second thing that I think our students did that was noteworthy was they really involved our staff and our teachers. And some of the games and some of the things that they did directly involved our teachers, and that really got spirit in the building kind of throughout, up and down, back and forth. So we're really happy. It now looks like it's going to be a tradition that's been started and will keep going. So we're really happy about that. Not only was it well planned, but executed and came off beautifully. So it was a pretty good end of a pretty good week last week. So.
All right, thank you, Jay. Here's a shout out to some of our students. First of all, I'd like to make it known that the United States Department of Education and the White House Commission on Presidential Scholars began a program in 1964 commending high school students across America for the highest academic and talent award that the Department of Education can give. 141 students are selected nationwide, 500 are nominated, and we have 2 students who were from Lake Forest, the high school that were nominated this year. So I'd like to congratulate Catherine Rowe and Matthew Wagoner. So that's incredibly prestigious. It's an award that began in 1964. And then finally, I'd just like to say something to our community about, we have our National Merit Scholar Program. We typically have 25 to 30 National Merit Scholars. This year we have 8 finalists. Also, there are semifinalists and commended in total. And this year we have 8 finalists. I'd like to say congratulations. This is an extremely high academic award that's been given to William Arnson, and Jay, you might have to help me. William Arnson, Hannah Gersten, Catherine Rowe, Rebecca Scribner, congratulations, John, Catherine Centel, Sam Tauk, Tucky, okay, thought so, that one. Matthew Wagoner again, and Amanda Zhao.
And just to go along with that, we know now that we have been awarded 150 Illinois State Scholars.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So congratulations to our students. Esprit de corps in the student body and on the faculty is just really excellent. Oh, great spirited week the last few weeks. The formal dance that was held recently was a huge turnout from our students. So I'd say it's really a lot of hard work going on in our classrooms, but also I think enjoying being a member of Lake Forest High School too. So that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Griffith. And how about just a second shout out to Rebecca, Patty, and John Scribner?
Thank you. We're very, very proud of her.
As you should be. It's now public participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board on a matter that is not included on the agenda? Yes, sir. Would you take the podium, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
If you would give us
My
your
name
name.
is-
Thank you.
Beg your pardon?
Yes, name and address, please. Thank you.
My name is Abe Goldsmith. I live at 1241 Lewis Avenue in Lake Forest. And I write for the Gazebo News. And you were very kind when I called you at home a couple months ago. And I thank you for that. I have a couple of questions which are in today's news. My first question is, in the past 2 years, has the school conducted locker searches for illegal drugs?
The answer is yes. We actually had drug dogs in our school a couple of years ago, and they went through every single locker. Actually, it was related to a potential bomb threat. And every 1,835 lockers were opened, and the school came out completely clean.
That was a couple of years ago, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. In the past 2 years, has the school conducted backpack or purse searches for illegal drugs?
That actually would be illegal. That's something that we can no longer do than you can by stopping people at the shopping mall, at church, on the ballpark. Schools are not able to just randomly open up backpacks.
Thank you. In the past 2 years, have any Lake Forest High School students been charged with having illegal drugs on school property?
On school property? I don't think so.
Thank you. Have Lake Forest High School authorities ever seized school students' cell phones for problems related to illegal drugs?
You know, it might help if you want to submit your questions. Maybe we could.
Well, I tried calling your office several times, and Mr. Hoffman's office, and I never received a call back, so that's why I came here tonight.
All right. Well, maybe it'll help if you could.
I just have two more.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a no on the cell phones?
I don't recall.
Why don't you pose all the questions, and with all of us here as witnesses, somebody will get back to you in the next day or two.
In the past 2 years, have there been any indications that illegal drugs were changing hands on school property? And the last question is, what positive steps and programs does Lake Forest Hospital have that raises awareness of illegal drugs?
That would take a long time to answer it, but I promise we will get back to you tomorrow or
Thank
the
you.
next day. We won't be crossing any lines, though, on privacy
Beg your
for our
pardon?
students, but we will get you as much information back as we can.
Thank you, Ms. Golan. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just submit your questions, send it by email, and then we can do some research for you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address the board? Yes, sir?
Doug Morrow, 1806 Bowling Green Drive. I have a small point of information about the contract, and first I'd like to thank everybody for their hard work for getting that all done. You talked about a buyout loan of $99,500. Is there an interest rate associated with that, or is it just pure loan with no interest rate?
No, I believe it's an interest-free loan.
Interest-free loan? Is there a formal contract for its payoff?
There will be a note, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Susan Franzetti, and I also serve as president of the Lake Forest Caucus. And I wanted to, first of all, extend to one of the former caucus presidents, Mr. Black. I was very sorry to hear tonight about the passing of your mother, and on behalf of the caucus, we send our condolences to you and your family. I also want to commend the board on finding a candidate that obviously has such extensive support, both among the board, and it sounded like from the comments tonight, among the community. I also want to commend the board and the community members and the administration members, teachers. All I have heard is about how many long hours you have all contributed to this effort. And I know that takes particularly you volunteers away from your families, and you get absolutely no compensation for that. So the caucus sends its strong approval of that level of effort that was put out. I think you all know, you've seen me, you have also seen the Vice President Gary Pete at your meetings since I think last summer, as we have tried to monitor the board and its issues because, and I want to be clear about this, because the caucus does engage in searches and selection and support of candidates for the school board. And that is the context in which we are here and conducting the monitoring. With respect to tonight's comments, it is of some concern. We were here for also the 67 meeting to hear 4 board members dissent from the contract. And I think I would just say that we look forward to the opportunity to have a dialogue with the board members to learn more about these issues with regard to, in particular, the performance standards issues that have been mentioned tonight by more than one board member, and in particular look forward to those future goals that are going to be worked out as between the board and the school superintendent, I believe you said in October. So thank you.
I would like to say our candidate is looking forward very much to working with both boards, getting to know us, and is keenly interested in some of our innovative ideas. So I see a really positive relationship that will be developing over the next few months.
One thing I'd like to point out, if I could too, is that we may disagree in discussion. We may not always vote unanimously, and in fact, it's probably healthy that we don't always vote unanimously. Once a decision has been taken, though, all board members are both legally and ethically obliged to live with the outcome of that vote. And I can say for certain that all of our board members are well aware of that, and I know that all of them will be giving our new superintendent their complete support. Doesn't mean people can't have their own opinions, but we do all understand what it is to work together as a board.
I might also add, too, in terms of negotiations, be it with teachers or candidates or employees, there's a certain degree of what I would consider to be personal information that as someone you're working with someone back and forth, and this is not to be that I'm not being transparent, but I would want to be sensitive to what the needs of a candidate might be and what their views might be. So it's not a matter of right and wrong or hiding issues. It's a matter of the give and take that went back and forth as people exchanged their opinions and their needs on both sides. Anyone else from the audience? All right.
I'd just like to take the opportunity, Madam President, to follow up on Nikki's comments. While we may disagree on approach to hiring a highly qualified superintendent, there is no disagreement. I want to continually stress that about the superintendent we've chosen to hire. And I think we're all 14 of us, if I can dare to speak on behalf of the other 13, are highly invested in making this a success. We've got a lot of time and effort and personal equity behind that unanimous selection, and I feel very, very comfortable in saying that we will all be working very hard to ensure that this is nothing but success going forward. So.
Thank you, Mr. Block. Moving on, we have a report tonight of the 2020 vision, but I know that some people here have school in the morning, and so if you may, if you might, I would like to entertain a motion that we move that report to the March meeting. It's a fabulous report. You will all want to come back and hear it, but is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved, and you're on for next month, guys.
Madam President,
yes.
I am truly exhausted, and if you don't mind, if it doesn't upset the quorum, I'd like to be excused from the rest of the meeting, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Good luck, Dick. Thank you. Okay, clip clop. Let's get through these board committee reports. First is Board Education Committee. Nikki?
Well, since we won't be having the 2020 vision report, I think I'll give a really long description of the 2020 vision discussion in the Education Committee, okay? No, I'm sorry, I will, I'll keep it brief. I just want to mention, and this perhaps I should mention under liaison reports, but the order would mess me up. I am the liaison to the Foundation Board, and I also this past month attended the liaison committee meeting, which is separate from being the liaison. Anyway, at both of those meetings, but especially the liaison committee, 2020 vision was the big topic of discussion. And Dr. Griffith and Mr. Hoffman gave an outstanding report on it at the liaison committee meeting. So I asked to have that presented to us at the education committee meeting. I think it was enormously helpful. I think all of us, our board members, our community members as well, ended up with a much greater understanding of what this is, when and how it's happening, and the fact that, as Jay will tell you, it's not all about the technology. There's a lot more to it than that. So I'd like to just really briefly go over what we talked about. Dr. Griffith provided an overview and some background on the American educational system. It's much more diverse and much more locally based than in most other countries. There are over 15,000 school districts in the U.S., and only recently has there been any attempt at a consistent curriculum. That consistent curriculum is coming into, or is being adopted. So far, it's been adopted by 45 states, and we'll be seeing that coming into play very soon, in the next 2 years, I think. So they talked quite a bit to us about what 2020 vision means. They've defined skills that are necessary for it, including personal and civil responsibility, learning and thinking skills, and communication literacies. And then each academic department has been meeting to talk about what those mean in their department, specifically what skills need to be developed, goals for the teachers, and timelines. Jay gave us information, and I know we'll get this in March then, about the actual infrastructure that'll be needed, who's responsible for what piece of it, and that is going really well. I think that's been well mapped out, and it's still being developed. And timeline, there's been some development of a timeline. Some things will be phased in soon, whereas other pieces of it are much more long-term. And it takes teachers time to adapt to new ways of working. One thing I will say, though, is that one of our community members, when we were leaving that meeting, said, you know, I've been doing a lot of research on education, and I've been seeing such great things coming down the pike, such wonderful research on new ways of doing things. What are our students really going to need to be competitive in our global economy? And she said, I kept wishing we could do those here, and now I see we actually are going to be doing those here. So that was a great comment. I was pleased that that she had that perspective. So that's all I need to say on that, and we'll hear the rest of it in March. Dr. Cooley gave us a brief update on NSSED, and I think we're going to be hearing more about that too. Basically, it's nothing we hadn't already heard. I think that we aren't withdrawing. The fee structure is going to be changing, and we are bringing the transition program in-house. By in-house, that it doesn't necessarily mean at the high school. I think we don't know for sure yet where it'll be based, but it'll be based in our own community. So that, I think, is a really good solution to that 18 months or so of research and work, thanks to Julie Cooley and others as well. Monty, do you have anything else from that meeting that you want to add?
Not at this time. We were just talking on the side here, and think we'll probably carry it forward to the next meeting.
And that's it. Thank you.
Do you have a meeting date?
Oh, our next meeting on the calendar is April 4th. If we need one in between, we'll let everybody know.
Thank you. A correction from earlier, that District 67 meeting said that Mr. Simic would be here in March. It will be the first week of April sometime. That's when he and his family are on spring break, so we'll let you know how that goes. Next, Board Operations Committee. We've lost Mr. Block and Mr. Bergner, so I will move on to the Board Finance Committee. Sure.
Just to report from the Operations Committee that the committee spent several meetings and quite a bit of time in all of its meetings on the Diamond campaign that's being conducted, that's gotten started in the community, fundraiser from the Booster Club One of the big discussion items was the possible responsibility the high school would have toward replacement of the track. Existing facilities would be the, particularly the track. It's in very poor condition. It is going to need to be replaced sometime in the next approximately 5 years. It also is a track that is deficient in its size, and its turn lanes are quite narrow. It does promote injury. The Operations Committee did review the project in some detail and endorsed the Booster Club moving forward with paying for completely a design, not just a concept design, but an actual architecturally written specifications for what the project would look like in its detail, as well as what its cost would. So that dominated the conversation, and the group as a whole, in its entirety, was very supportive of not only the project in general, but also with respect to the district's responsibility in the near future for the track, whether it's now with the Booster Club project or sometime later, where we would be faced with doing replacement, updating ourselves anyway.
Thank you, Dr. Griffith. Next, we have the Board Finance Committee. Jim Carey, John Scribner.
The Finance Committee met on February 9th. One issue was a one-year extension of our arrangement with our external auditors, Miller Cooper. That was unanimously supported by the committee and is on our agenda for our approval later on. There's, I think, a modest increase of maybe 3% associated with the extension of that, but as we discussed at the last meeting, the relationship with Miller Cooper has been very positive on a number of fronts, and we would like to continue it for one more year. The second and larger of the two items reviewed at the Finance Committee meeting was this Diamond Anniversary campaign relative to the East Campus. I've got a few bullet points here, and I'll ask John to jump in as we go along here. I mean, clearly this is an impressive project. It's terrific to have the support of the Booster Club wanting to take on an effort up its size. We're talking about a several million-dollar initiative. We have many priorities within the district. The replacement of the track was not necessarily a very high one at this point in time. We knew at some point we would have to do the replacement, but again, in the overall scheme of things, it wasn't high on the list. When you get an opportunity to have a group like the Boosters come forward and say they would like to help us accelerate that, it only makes sense to listen. And we are, again, working through the Operations Committee trying to come up with a project that meets our needs both operationally as well as fiscally. The Finance Committee is certainly in concept supportive of the idea of supporting the overall project with the dollars associated with replacing the track, but that's got to be defined. There's got to be more specific work on that so we know exactly what we're getting into. Right now it would be a ballpark number at best. There's also the matter of when will the Booster Club have all the funds assembled to pay for this. We've talked before about the current financial condition of the district. We don't really want to be taking on additional debt unless we've got a 100% airtight financing scheme, which is either cash, in which case you don't really need the financing, or collateralized pledges, and the form of that collateral would have to be determined. But we need a very airtight arrangement with the boosters relative to the funds being assembled to finance the project if we're to, I think, recommend to the full board that we proceed. We've also talked, I think, when Brian and his associates were here about a year ago, that it's obviously more cost-effective to do this project in one fell swoop as opposed to phase it in over a few years. But if perchance the total amount of funding isn't sufficient to take on the big project, one consideration would be to break it down into more manageable pieces, and manageable meaning ones that they could pay for immediately. So again, Finance Committee was supportive of it, but with obviously a lot of provisos and just concerns about the financing for it. But it's a tremendous project if we could pull it off, or if the Booster Club could pull it off. John, do you want to add a little color to that?
You summarized it perfectly, Jim, but I would add that there was unanimous support for the idea. That's a great idea. But there was also unanimous agreement that we could not pledge any of the assets of the district in support of the funding of that project. It would have to be 100% either cash or collateralized.
That was the extent of the meeting, and we don't have a date set up for the next one, I don't believe. Okay. A date to be announced. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim and John. There are no liaison reports tonight, so I will move on to the action items. The first is the approval of the IASB policy revisions, and I am going to suggest that we waive first reading tonight and go on to second reading. I'm also going to suggest that we not read all of the policies aloud tonight, because Mr. Bergner, Mr. Edson, and I did work for several hours with Dr. Griffith going through all of these policies, so you wouldn't have to all listen to them tonight. But all the board members have them, and they have reviewed them, and I will turn it over to Dr. Griffith.
Yeah, board members, we have a policy service, School Board Association. We use this policy service for your manual. It's developed at the state level by the School Board Association, reviewed by attorneys. And what they do is the press releases come out 2-3 times a year updating our policies with respect to changes in legislation, amendments having to do with improving clarity, or say a state's attorney ruling, or a federal court case. So no real material changes in our policies, just a lot of clarifications. You can see that you've got notes in the along the way for each of the policies. And again, there were 4 of us that spent several hours together. I had them also reviewed by our administrative staff previous to that. So what this does is this brings us up to current with the School Board Association and their recommended policy improvements and clarifications on it's about 20 policies.
Do any of the board members have questions or comments about any of the policies that were presented to you? They're pretty straightforward. We get a lot of good information from the state on their recommendations and changes in the law. So while it's not anybody's favorite job on the board, it's a necessary one, and I want to thank everybody who did take the time to go through these with us. First a waive, right? So the first motion would be to waive first reading.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then first reading. Oh, thank you. So we'll be waiving the first reading, and there's no second? No. All right. Then is there a motion to approve the IASB policy revisions as they were presented to you?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, board members, we'll contact the School Board Association with the acceptance of those modifications. In the past, on occasion, we put our own clarifications and changes in that with respect to the minor changes going on this time, that didn't happen from the committee.
Once we hear back from IASB, those changes will be reflected on our website. All of our policies are available on the school website, and you can catch up with them there. Next, we have the approval of resolution for asset disposal. Dr. Griffith?
Okay, board members, this is a once every 5-10-year event for us. Alan Albus can give us a quick overview of that.
In your packet is a memo that outlines the fact that under the school code we have to establish a procedure or process to dispose of equipment, So what the memo talks about is utilizing an online auction service, looking for other school districts or public entities to donate to, and ultimately ending up, if we go through several iterations and cannot find a recipient, ultimately scrapping the equipment. Some of the things that we're looking at the moment are, I think we have some old exercise bikes, some gymnastic equipment, some storage lockers that were left over from the construction. I don't know if anything else comes to mind right now, but those type of items.
Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution for disposal of surplus items as presented.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Is there, do any board members have questions or comments about this? None? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have the approval of the auditor contract renewal. Dr. Griffith?
Okay, board members, this was reviewed by the Finance Committee and is being recommended by the Finance Committee. Mr. Albus?
As the memo in your packet says, the proposed increase is a 3.1% increase over last year's contract. Last year's contract, this would be the first increase in 2 years with Miller Cooper. As we talked about when they came out and met with the joint finance committees, we've developed, I would say, a very efficient working relationship with Miller Cooper. They're very succinct when they come in. They know what they're asking for. We provide it. We have very substantive discussions around it, but it's a very efficient relationship, and for that, it doesn't interrupt our daily operations, so we recommend it as well.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please?
I'll move that the Board of Education approve a one-year extension with Miller Cooper for audit services for 2011-12.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from board members? Okay. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mr. Edson?
Aye.
Mr. Scribner?
Aye.
Mrs. Golan?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the approval of the Human Resources Report. Dr. Griffith?
Okay, board members, Jen Knight is with us and tonight, and I'd like to call on Jen for this report. I was going to say a few things about what great work she's doing at the high school for us, but I think Jen will speak for herself here, so thank you, Jen.
Well, thank you. And I do know, and I've been thoroughly outshone when it comes to a human resources report. So I thank you all for your human resources report, and I'm pleased with our new superintendent, as I know everyone who participated in the process is. I do want to share a few things that are going on within the school related to human resources. We had last Saturday, we attended the job fair, and by we, I mean approximately 30 of our faculty members and teachers. Although we have happily finished our hiring process even for long-term substitutes this year, it is good for us to go out and kind of see what's out there in the teaching field. 1,400 candidates came through in all of the different content areas. We were there along with 14 pretty comparable high schools, and so it was good for us as a school to be out there, to be known, to get our name out there, and also to see where our candidates are. We also have coming up in the next month 2 Institute Days, 2 professional development days in-house. The first is this coming Friday, and it is a tri-district day. We are, you may not be surprised, going to be focusing on technology, along with both District 65 and 67 will have a presentation in the morning related to some of the ins and outs, ups and downs of social networking when it comes to both faculty members and students. And then we will move into some content area discussions around what is going on with technology in the various subject areas at the various classrooms, and how best we can support each other as a K through 12 educational community in this effort. Then March 2nd, we will have a high school only Institute Day, and as you have also mentioned, there are a lot of changes in the state evaluation document and process, and we are doing a lot of work on that in-house. On March 2nd, we hope to share the work that we've done. We've moved into a Danielson framework, and we've done that with a group of approximately 20 of our teachers, but we're going to share that with the staff at large, spend some time on it, looking in small groups, getting feedback, and starting to help people have a better understanding of how this observation and evaluation process will change what we're doing through the feedback process for our teachers. The last item is actually coming up on March 14th, which I know we have a board meeting shortly before, but did want to share with you, we are fortunate to have Stedman Graham. He is a, he is a speaker and an author and also Oprah's boyfriend, but probably shouldn't introduce him like that too much, but it might give you a little context. He came and met with us a couple times over the course of this school year to talk about a program that he offers that is truly focusing on leadership, but leadership for students, and that starts with knowing who you are within, that is the critical stage and the critical step, that knowing who you are within, knowing what's important to you, and then developing your leadership, developing your choices throughout that. So we are fortunate to have him coming in March to do 2 workshop sessions with our students and then do a nighttime session with parents. We are working with Boosters and APT to start publicizing this. We just found out about it a week ago. So some exciting things in a busy time, and we'll try and come up with something new and exciting for next month. I think we'll actually be starting to look at our 12-13 staffing. So thank you.
I wanted to say, when I read the list of people who were intending to retire, I thought, oh my gosh, Wipeout, so many longtime friends. And I think you had something to do with this, but I did read all of their letters, and it was like a little piece of Lake Forest High School history. It was, I enjoyed them. So thank you for that.
Yeah, there were some exciting ones, and I think that we'll probably see a few more. And I'd just like to say as a disclaimer, I helped with the process. I didn't drive them out.
And Jen, since we only get to actually do the hiring once every 18 years, you have to let us have a little hoopla about it.
You made it look hard to do. I'm just kidding. Involved, how about that?
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Then may I have a motion to approve the Human Resources Report?
So moved.
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Scribner?
Aye.
Mr. Edson?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mrs. Golan?
Aye, motion carries. Next is the approval of the 2012-13 staff compensation. Oh, sorry, 11-12. That was a typo. Dr. Griffith?
Okay, board members, again, this is for the 11-12 for this year. At the start of this school year, there were 10 employees who we did not address for this year, and chief among these 10 employees, their compensation has been frozen for 2, even 3 years, and so I'm recommending an average based on performance of 2.61, which is less than what the support staff received this year, of 2.70%. In a couple of cases, there's a market adjustment based on North Shore school districts, generally speaking, in the area, as well as there is a performance-based, performance-related goal, based on goals, accomplishment recommendation also as a part of this compensation for this year.
All right, may I have a motion to approve the 11-12 staff compensation?
I move that the Board of Education approve the 2011-2012 staff compensation as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Board members, do you have any questions or comments at this time? Okay, hearing none, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mr. Edson?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Scribner?
Aye.
Mrs. Golan?
Aye, motion carries. Next, we have the consent agenda. Is there any item that a board member would like to have removed from the consent agenda at this time? All right, hearing none. The consent agenda consists of the approval of the financial report and schedule of checks written, The approval of minutes from a regular meeting from January 9th, 2012, executive session January 9th, 2012, executive session January 10th, 2012, executive session January 11th, 2012, executive session January 12th, 2012, executive session January 13th, 2012, an executive session January 14th, 2012, a special meeting of January 24th, 2012, and an executive session of, wait, I got confused. Executive session January 24th, 2012, and executive session February 1st, 2012. Also, the destruction of audio recordings, we have none this month. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mr. Edson?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Scribner?
Aye.
Mrs. Golan?
Aye. Motion carries. There were 3 FOIA requests this month. Nick Carone of the SEIU Local 73, Matt Armstrong from Crossroads Kids Club, and Chris Yee, YG Commemorative. Future agenda items, we will be discussing the NSSED report again, and also our 2020 vision. Announcements. Friday, February 17th is an Institute Day, no student attendance. Monday, February 20th, President's Day, no school. Wednesday, February 22nd, late start day. And our next regular Board of Education meeting will be on March 13th at 7 p.m. here in the West Campus Boardroom. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.